sitting safe behind our castle walls. Fast forward to the siren in the distance, getting closer by the minute. Will you stand and answer to the call? Burn like a fire, willful and wild. This is the night that you were made for. Don't close your eyes, safer to stare into the sun than to turn away from what you could become. This was once a perfect symphony, soft and steady like a heartbeat. But these notes turn dissonant and sour, getting violently devoured. So will you stand or let the curtain fall? Burn like a fire, willful and wild. This is the night that you were made for. Don't close your eyes, safer to stare into the sun than to turn away from what you could become. The time has come to stand and fight for what you believe, for what you believe. The dark will fall and we will rise. Like a fire, willful and wild. This is the night you were made for. Burn like a fire. This is the night that you were made for. Don't close your eyes, safer to stare into the sun than to turn away from what you could be. The time has come to stand and fight, deconstruct, reignite. Safer to stare into the sun than to turn away from what you could become.
Love to hate, repeating my mistakes. Now there's no one left to listen, no one left to listen. Take a chance, the consequence. When there's no one left to listen, no one left to listen. Right now we're taking control. Tired of waiting, tired of waiting for something new. Right now we're taking control. Tired of waiting, tired of waiting for something new. Twist the knife and feed the sacrifice.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to coverage of the LeafFilter Gutter Protection Replacements iRacing Series. Live tonight from Myrtle Beach Speedway in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. I'm James Pike alongside Evan Pasoko and Justin Prince in the booth. And as always, Cisco Scarabuzza punching the buttons in our virtual production trailer upstairs as we go short track racing in the replacements for the first time this year, Evan Pasoko. But not only do we go short track racing, we go short track racing with the street stocks, which just slide and slide and slide everywhere. If fun was what you wanted, you're in a very, very good place this evening.
It's absolutely perfect, and we were kind of talking before we went on the air this evening about who we thought was going to be that first new name maybe to break into victory lane, and if that was going to happen. And tonight is prime opportunity to do it, because not only you mentioned the short track aspect of it, not only is Myrtle Beach such a fun short track on the iRacing service, but you double it up with the street stock. Not just tonight have these drivers had to strap into this street stock. A lot of these drivers have been driving this in on the sim for the last couple of weeks with all the downtime, having so much fun. It is going to be super physical, and that means for all of you tuned in, super exciting as we get set for 125 laps.
We've got a new car tonight, Justin Prince. We've also got some new names in this series this evening. A few notable additions to the roster, you would say?
Yes, absolutely. Of them, of course, the most notable, Kevin Harvick making his debut in the series tonight. It's been talked about for the past couple weeks that he's been trying to get prepared with the simulator before participating in races such as this. He actually has one official iRacing win under his belt in 6 attempts, but he gets ready to race in the street stocks tonight. He was in the bottom half in practice, should know, James, but he's one of the few drivers we're going to see brand new to the short track tonight.
And in addition to Kevin Harvick, some guy named Kyle Busch has decided to join the replacement. Evan Pasoko, I figure you being a fellow Las Vegas native, maybe you know a thing or two about what he can do?
Yeah, he knows a thing or two about being behind the wheel of the race car, but admittedly, we've seen some of the struggles that he's had in the big cars getting adjusted to iRacing in the Pro Invitational stuff. But the way that the ladder in official iRacing works is when you start your oval sim racing career, whether you're me 7 years ago or Kyle Busch 2 weeks ago, the first car that you get put into, if you want to go official racing on iRacing on the ovals, is this street stock at tracks like Myrtle Beach Speedway. It kind of opens things up a little bit more, some less finesse, and you can be a little bit more aggressive. When you've got a massive field like this with a little bit of real estate fighting for, that driver emotion and flair can come out, and I don't think there's many drivers that like that description better than the driver of that 51 Rowdy Energy machine.
To believe you're right on all points there. And let's also take into consideration, Justin Prince, that this racetrack that we're at, Myrtle Beach Speedway, tons of history, opened up just before 1960. They've been coming here for over 50 years. Late model racing, super late model racing, street stock racing, mini stock racing, any kind of short track racing they've done here at Dirty Myrtle.
Yeah, and this is such a great facility when it comes to the type of racing, because there's the chance for plenty of side-by-side racing, especially with how tight it can be coming off of turn number 4. There could be lots of great battles with these street stocks tonight. It should be an absolutely entertaining one, James, to say the very least, at this historic venue.
A tremendously historic venue as we take a look at track temps and the fun weather conditions that we'll be dealing with tonight. We are going to be racing on the iRacing Day, the default day for racing on the service, May 15th, 2020, just around 8 o'clock Eastern time here. And air temps a very balmy 78 degrees Fahrenheit, winds to the north at 2 miles an hour, humidity of 55%, track temps of 80 degrees Fahrenheit, and a field that is now set to go in a grid that we are ready to take you through as we get set for round number 2 of the LeafFilter Gutter Protection Replacements iRacing Series from Myrtle Beach, where Christian Eckes starts at the pole after putting down a qualifying time of 20.614 seconds to take the top spot over Ross Chastain. Ty Majeski will start from the 3rd position. 4th will be the 11 of Justin Haley. TJ Major starts 5th this evening. 6th will be the 99 of Ben Rhodes. Jordan Erickson begins from 7th. 8th is where you'll find the 88 of Kevin Hamlin. Tyler Overstreet starts from 9th. And iRacing's own Kevin Iannarelli starts with that number 27 car in the 10th position.
And just behind there, you'll find Garrett Smidley starting in 11th position. He's teamed up with the 54 of Rodney Childers, who started P12. Drew Herring's going to be 13th. Tacoma to Presley alongside in the 14th spot. Harrison Burton making the start will start in the 15th position. Anthony Alfredo right there, P16. Ryan Truex starts from 17th. Taylor Gray at 18th. And back on row 10, you'll find the 31 at Tim Duggar and the 15 car, Regan Smith.
Kyle Busch deep in the field tonight, 21st position for Rowdy Nation. He'll start alongside Kaulig Racing's Chris Rice. In the following row, it's Ron Cap starting alongside Fabio Bonte in a throwback scheme this evening. In 25th, it's Chase Briscoe alongside crew chief Chad Canals. AJ McCarron starts 27 alongside Kevin Harvick in his major iRacing Series debut. Jonathan Davis, Justin Allgaier round out the top 30.
Final 7 starters are Dale Earnhardt Jr., Brent Wentz, Josh Berry, Joshua Williams, Parker Kligerman, Kyle Long, and Boris Cook, rounding out the field for this race, which will go 125 laps, 67.25 miles, and 108.25 kilometers for all of our friends who use the metric system, and the folks on either side of me in the booth who hail from the Great White North of Canada and all the other places in the world that eschew all of the imperial silly feet and inches, miles, and what have you. But a fun race, no doubt. A fun place, no doubt. Justin Prince, final thoughts before we go green.
This is a track where we might see very different contenders up in the front, to say the very least. So far in our first 2 events, it's been 2 Joshes who have came into victory lane. Joshua Williams, Josh Berry. Tonight going to be a very different race. Remember, there's many competitors such as TJ Majors, along with drivers such as Coleman Presley, who have lived on the short tracks, as well as Ty Majeski, who might be contenders tonight.
2 more points of note. Boris Cook, Parker Kligerman, William Byron, Josh Williams, Josh Berry were eligible to go to the back of the field as the top 5 finishers from Kansas, so they'll have to work their way through the field, and no tires for these drivers. You've got to run with what you have as we get set for green flag racing at 125 laps at Myrtle Beach. We're underway with round 2 of the LeafFilter Gutter Protection Replacements iRacing Series, and they all bomb off into one, and it wasn't the greatest of starts for Christian Eckes, who got loose on the bottom. Here comes Ty Majeski underneath him as Ross Chastain jumps out to a 2 to 3 car length lead already.
He was still a little bit slow off at the start there. You talk about bombing them off. They looked like some bombers at a local short track. How much they were beating it a bang at that time at a straightaway. Eck is still very slow. It was Majeski who nearly knocked the rear end off of that car lap 1. He takes over second. Majors slides through into third. So Eck is going to try to stop the bleeding. Against the LeafFilter entry on the bottom, it's Justin Haley side by side. This battle at a turn 4 inside line. Get wet out it again, and Eckes cannot find a footing. Now here comes Ericsson up the bottom.
Really good stuff from Ericsson. He had a great run out of turn 4. Wreck, though, a little bit further back. Coleman Presley goes around. Whether or not it brings out the yellow flag, indeed it does, as Presley's one of the drivers that gets swept up in this, and the yellow flag is out for the first time, and so many people torn up. Everybody all on their lid. Regan Smith, Boris Cook, Kyle Busch stopped down there, Rodney Childers, Chris Rice. Oh, who else here? We could just name a whole litany of people. Justin Prince, who got swept up in that one.
Well, I was talking with Josh Williams earlier tonight, where you would like to keep your car clean. There were no resets in the series. Well, that's a track blocker and a half that's going to take a lot of names and give them a lot of bumps and bruises to deal with it tonight. Just nowhere for about 10-15 different drivers to go in that mayhem.
And no Nutrient Ag Solutions fast repairs tonight. We'll probably need them when we get to Talladega in 2 weeks' time with the Cup Card. That's the next event. So mark your calendars already if you're curious. But tonight, you just have to survive, Evan Pisoko. And I think really good stuff from some of the drivers out there. Parker Kligerman in particular, to get down to the bottom and just stop. Not worry about anything besides making sure that you get your car through that mess in one piece. And you look at that 77 machine, all of a sudden, he's got a pretty clean car and a little bit of breathing room to boot.
You know, the racetracks aren't really comparable, but I've seen a lot of that this week on the service at Bristol. If there's a wreck, just the way that these kind of racetracks have a wall right there on the bottom and nowhere really to go, that it's best to just park it and not try to be the hero to get through. And you mentioned the possibility that maybe we were going to get the caution flag on it. Of course, we did. That's going to be controlled by the tower for these. So as we heard that cars were spinning, I was kind of thinking in my head, all right, hey, if it's a couple of cars, why not? Let's keep going. Glance over to turns 3 and 4. And it's, 24 cars or so stopped or involved in the incident in some way. And listen, that's what you get when you start 37 cars at a half-mile oval. Normally at the short track scene, you'll go heat racing, whittle it down. Everybody out here has to get through the traffic. And, of course, the biggest challenge going to be, you mentioned the top 5 finishers from last week's race in Kansas. It's not like they didn't have speed, and that's why they're in traffic. They had to go to the end of it all to get this one kicked off. So that's kind of why they found themselves with the front row view with all of the chaos. And with no quick repairs, it takes a lot to kill a street stock. However, I don't think lap 3 of 125 is really where you want to start trying to push its limits.
And you can see on pit road some of the folks who have really taken the hits. Bobby Labonte, we talked about a little bit earlier. Justin Prince mentioned he had that Piedmont Airlines paint scheme, the airline from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, that eventually rose to prominence with Terry Labonte in the Cup Series when they won a title back in 1984 and eventually merged into American Airlines, of all things. Finally getting off of pit road, but now a few laps down. Same for Regan Smith, Dale Earnhardt Jr. A little bit back there. Anthony Alfredo had some damage. Rodney Childers, Coleman Presley, Kevin Harvick, AJ McCarron, Kyle Busch, all trapped up there. But in the meantime, everybody going double file, so we'll get you set for this restart on lap 9 of 100. Ross Chastain and the Nutrient Ag Solutions machine will lead them to green. Then it will be Ty Majeski, TJ Majors, Jordan Erickson, Justin Haley, Christian Eckes, Kevin Hamlin, Ben Rhodes, Tyler Overstreet, and Garrett Smithley, who's worked his way into the top 10 as they get back on the gas one more time. Chastain with a great launch to get ahead of Majeski, who's out in front by about a car length and a half now. But Jordan Erickson, tons of speed there as Justin Haley didn't get going, and he's got about the whole field stacked up behind him, Justin Prince.
Christian Eckes is way up on the top of the racetrack as well, all the way from 9th to about 18th position. Just couldn't get back to the bottom of the racetrack and just got absolutely freight train trouble behind them, though. Ron Capps just got turned.
Ron Capps gets turned. Ty Majeski goes to the front. He's to the inside of Ross Chastain. Are we going to get the yellow flag here? Absolutely not, as Majeski might get crossed over by Chastain going into turn 3. And you see just how much these cars lean on the right front tire. I think that's something that we need to know. It's something that all the rookie drivers will know pretty well. They're pretty used to the street stocks, but when you leave the street stocks and you go further up in the official ranking system, Evan Pasoka, when you go to Class D, Class C, Class B, you forget just how much you lean on the right front and just how much air gets underneath that left front corner. All the weight goes onto the right side, and it makes these cars very, very tricky to drive. There's not really much downforce in the front end.
It was funny, before we actually got going here, I threw the wheel on the desk and did a couple of laps. As you see, TJ Majors going to go on by for second. I know Erickson going to team up, so Ross Chastain under fire here. And it felt like the left front tire's up and in the air for how hard you're rotted on the right side, getting through the quarters there. And you can see for the good start that Haley, or I should say for Chastain, had trying to get up to the field. He now falls to P4 just ahead of Haley.
And don't forget here too, guys, first of all, you cannot have any tire changes tonight, so whatever set of tires you have, if you accidentally take tires won't get any damage repaired even, that's a 1-lap penalty. But second, in discussions with some of the drivers for tonight, they mentioned not too much fall off in the first 50 laps, but after that, the tires fall off a cliff and it will get tighter and tighter.
Oh, big incident there. Looked like it might have been Christian Eckes again who was up, but even more cars stopped a little bit further back in the field. Ron Capps was around all that. No yellow flag, though, again, as everybody gets bottled up here, but it was Chris Rice and then Chad Knaus in the 189 stuck up top, as now he gets lapped by Majeski and Majors and company.
And just before we saw that, we saw Drew Harry get nearly turned sideways as well. He was able to hang on, but the 3 cars going to drop back a couple of positions. And again, a lot of these incidents self-righting. So because it is manual cautions from the tower, we stay green. Now working lap 16 of 125. Some good separation amongst the top 4. They have pulled away, but for 5th on the back, it is a different name of the game, as it is all Kevin Hamlin in the 5th position ahead of a bunch of hungry drivers, including including the 99 roads up top. You've got Tyler Overstreet on the bottom. He's basically been pushed around by Smithley the last few laps, and a close call there with the 99 car.
Really tight stuff in that battle for 6th and 7th. That's the first really good battle on track when you come down the running order. Overstreet, though, clears Rhodes, so now it's Smithley in that 33 machine, working underneath Rhodes in the 99. Harrison Burton is in tow as well. Kevin Iannarelli is right there. Tim Duggar having a good showing after a disappointing outing at Kansas 2 weeks ago. He's already up to 11th and now looking underneath Iannarelli for 10th.
Yes, indeed. Diving down to the bottom side. Overstreet able to cut things off. It's been getting crazy, though, in that portion of the field. Guys like Garrett Smithley making their street stock debuts tonight, looking to make some statements. Able to finally get themselves down to single file in this situation. But the more these cars fight, the more they burn out the tires, because they're going to have to be fighting so hard to get onto that preferred bottom line around the racetrack.
You want to get down to the bottom, but I think the interesting thing here about Myrtle Beach, because I too also tried to put down a few laps on this track, Evan, before we got green, is that the apexes here are really, really late in the corner. Way later than you would think, and way later than they are compared to some of the other tracks, especially some of the other short tracks of this size of the sim, like a Richmond or Iowa. You wait before you get down to the bottom of the racetrack and then just blast it off the corner to get the runs down these big, long straightaways, especially for these street stocks, which are a little underpowered compared to some of the other short track parts.
Yeah, I found myself backing up the corners a little bit too much, and all the other cars were around me. Of course, for their sake, I wasn't actually on the track with them, so they didn't see me. But entry was where I really struggled with my first couple of laps. So you do have to have that bravado to get deep enough and into the corner, and trust that when you get to that late apex to turn off, that it is going to hook up and go. And again, unique to Myrtle Beach, just the way that these corners are shaped. One of the unique challenges, you couple that with the bumps down on the inside, the white line in the apron, makes it a very tricky racetrack and a technical one to drive. And now that we've got a green flag lap underneath us, some more passing top 10 as Harrison Burton's going to get passed by Kevin Iannarelli for 9th and 10th position. You see all the side-by-side behind with the likes of Truex and Duggar in the 31 machine working on the inside. Parker Kligerman started in 35th. Pike, he's up to now 13th. There's all contact. Duggar's going to get turned as they tried to clear lap traffic, and Boris Cook is up and over.
A lot of people caught up in this one as the yellow flag comes out on lap 23, and that was Duggar and Truex, I think, you got together with Chad Knaus in the 189. Duggar was just trying to come up and follow the normal line, get along the wall in the back straightaway. Not sure if he realized that Truex was coming to his inside, trying to avoid Chad Knaus. Those two came together. They spun up the racetrack. Then Truex came down and left Boris Cook absolutely nowhere to go whatsoever. He went straight into the tire barrier right at the beginning of pit road. Looks like Chris Rice might have also been swept up in this. Actually, it's Jonathan Davis who got caught up in this incident over in turn 3 as Justin Allgaier and Kyle Busch barely were able to sneak through it.
And I'm just sitting here thinking, though, James, Chad Knaus was on the top line. He was going to max speed down the back straightaway at 72 miles an hour. Some of the cars are already going 110 plus at that segment. Not the best line you want lap traffic to be when they're that slow due to damage on the racetrack. Those situations with everyone having to take evasive maneuvers like that are exactly why you do not want lap cars like that on the top line tonight.
You would think that the bottom would probably be where you want to go, especially with the way you apex into these corners. You sort of come in high and then find the low point very, very late, like we talked about just a little bit ago. So it's almost a little bit easier to navigate some of these lap cars if they stay down to the bottom. If they go up top, they're right in the way when you go down these straightaways, Evan Pashoko, and then you see people swerving left and swerving right, trying to avoid them, and you end up with incidents like the one we just had.
Yeah, unfortunately, there isn't really any one-size-fits-all. And we talked about the field size in this one. I mean, even if we get 20, 30, 40 laps into a run and you're up on some traffic, I don't really think, maybe aside from the top 5 or so, when we saw those first 4 or so whatever cars in line be able to pull away from everybody else, I don't really think the rest of the field is going to get strung out to the point, where it's going to be really easy to clear traffic. The traffic is going to be those, cars that are off the pace, and you're going to be trying to navigate around them and maybe pushing the boundaries a little bit more than you should. Of course, trying to not give up time, or if you're the car chasing somebody, try to make up some time by not allowing the lap traffic to affect you. And that's just a part of short track racing that you have to deal with as this race now it gets inside of 100 laps to go. It's another thing that we really haven't talked a ton about, James. You know, in these races, 125 laps is a pretty healthy number for a main event, but without any heat racing, that's all you get. With the exception of course, single car qualifying, you really don't have a lot of time to make up spots. This is very much a sprint, so you got to get up and on the wheel, and I think that might be a contributing factor also.
I think it's that plus the fact that caution laps count tonight. That's probably the biggest thing that we need to worry about as we turn our attention to some of the paints in tonight's race as everybody gets set to go back to green flag racing in just a moment. Looking like we might get one to go within the next few laps here, but that's 73 of Josh Berry as the lights do come off the pace car. Berry, who runs a late model in the real-life Solid Rock Carriers Cars Tour, now has a little bit of help from our friends at iRacing. He's got the All Things Automotive paint on the back, just like he does in his late model in real life for Junior Motorsports, and iRacing on the hood. Cisco should be a lot of fun, I think, to see what he does. We'll take a look at some of the other paints as we go through the evening, but for now, to the restart, which will come on lap 30 with Ty Majeski, TJ Majors, Jordan Erickson, Ross Chastain, Garrett Smithley, Kevin Hamlin, Tyler Overstreet, Ben Rhodes, Kevin Iannarelli, and Harrison Burton, your top 10, as Majeski spun the tires just a little bit, but Jordan Erickson's been very, very good here. Justin Prince, I think that might be one driver we have to watch tonight as Majeski slides a little bit up the racetrack, but Erickson's been there in lockstep with the 45. Almost seems like he's one of the few drivers that might be able to hang with the short track ace.
Yeah, him and Majors have looked very strong pace-wise so far. Near identical lap times in this middle portion of the run, so to speak, on the tires so far. Going to be interesting, though, to see if Ericsson can get side by side with Majeski. After all, it's easy to catch someone. It's difficult to pass them. And right now, Ericsson's got the benefit of being single file. Majors, though, he's stuck on that top line. Smithley really trying to make the bottom line work a little bit. Just can't get door bumper clear by that 22.
You want to talk about drivers who have really made a name for themselves over the past few weeks since the situation that we're in is gone out and swept over the world. Evan Pasoko. How about Garrett Smithley, who had a great run in Homestead in the Pro Invitational Series, backed it up with another solid run at Texas, and now is up here towards the front fighting TJ Majors for that third possession in the second race of the LeafFilter Gutter Protection Replacements iRacing Series.
Garrett's been doing a real good job. He's kind of up there with the likes of Timmy Hill and Landon Castle as you see Majors get on by. So he snatched his third back just as quickly as he lost it, and Garrett a little bit loose that time off of the corner. But it is a really good opportunity for those drivers who have made it to the top level of NASCAR National Series racing, but in that underfunded equipment to show, listen, this is what I can do on an even playing field. And of course, it's their description of an even playing field, because you might be going against some Cup Series drivers who are nowhere near as experienced as you in the sim, so it is all relative. But I think it's awesome that Garrett, his sponsors, and some of those other names have been getting that TV time on Fox on Sunday afternoons, and as well running good here on the short tracks, because I do think a race like this, street stocks at Myrtle Beach, really throw a street stock on anything under 3/4 of a mile in length is more quintessential iRacing. That's why you're seeing the likes of Ty Majeski, who has had speed on the weekends with the big show, but has struggled to kind of put the results together, is doing very good, a second and a half, or half a second, I should say, out in front, the likes of Smithley in fourth. So again, this kind of reels it back in to what iRacing is all about, and these drivers, again, have a lot of that control in their wheel.
Turn our attention to Kevin Iannarelli, who was just a few cars ahead of Harrison Burton, who got turned into the fence in turn 3 by Kyle Long in that 75, so Burton slid back a little bit. But Iannarelli also running the iRacing colors on his machine. Justin Prince, he works at iRacing, incidentally, as part of the team that scans the tracks that come into the service, but also runs the modified on the weekend. So Iannarelli obviously has the iRacing experience, but he's got the real-world short track experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely, and he's shown a lot of the good speed. He's actually helped a lot with the preparation for some of the drivers for some of the major events as well, to get them acquainted with the tracks. But keep an eye on the car behind him as well here, James, because Parker Klugerman, He got through that big incident. That 77 Valvoline machine is the biggest mover on the track so far. A plus 26 for the drop of the green flag, and he's one of the quickest cars on the racetrack and slowly closing in. But keep an eye as well on Kevin Iranarelli and his ability to try and use the top line to defend. Some drivers like to use that line to make sure they can pinch down their competitors, force them to get off the gas, off the corners, and then they get the better run and carry better momentum. That in turn might help if, say, Kligerman reels back in the 27 in a moment.
You bring up an interesting point. I'll turn to our friend in the Twitch chat. Tyler Dalton, Zone 15, brought up the point that, normally you think that the bottom is the better place to be here at Myrtle Beach, but instead, sometimes you find yourself preferring the top line, especially if you're side by side with someone, because you have the ability to pinch them on corner exit and kill their momentum down the straightaway. In some cases, it can actually be easier to defend from the top than it is from the bottom. Not always the case, but there are a few occasions during the race where I think we're going to see that pan out, play out, and happen, and it just depends both on your level of comfort with the car and the track, and then your driving style as to where you end up in this race. Majeski's still in front. He's out ahead of TJ Majors by a full second. And then Majors has put about half a second between the rear bumper of the 22 and Jordan Erickson in the 85 machine, who runs in third. Then it's Smithley, who's tailing Erickson. Then about another second back to Ross Chastain. And that's really where this pack opens up, Evan Pasoko. Is Chastain, Kevin Hamlin, Tyler Overstreet, Ianarelli, and Parker Kligerman that we just talked about. Ben Rhodes, Drew Herring. You can go all the way back to Harrison Burton before you find another gap to the 75 of Kyle Long.
Yeah, it's the first time tonight that we've really seen this field get the separation that we're looking at now as we run on board with the 3 of Harry in 11th spot. He's trying to chase down Ben Rhodes, and he'll flash it out to the inside, and we'll go side by side for 10th and 11th on the racetrack. He's got it on the bottom. Yes, sir. I think that, the lack of quick repairs as Harry now slaps the wall on the back straightaway is taking the cars in that earlier incidents, I should say, out of this race. You're seeing the separation, but it doesn't mean we're not fighting. You look off of the back end of Harry. Look at the big line of cars behind. There's always somebody trying to look at somebody else in front of them to make a move to challenge 46 laps in of 125. Get our legs stretched out underneath us and get some green flag racing in. We've got top 5 cars, though, leaning on each other. It's actually Smithley with lap traffic. What a downturn it's been for Christian Eckes, who qualified on a pole, James. He has not had a good night. Really struggled on restarts, and him and Garrett were leaning on each other. He did not want to let the 33 car go by, who's right now P4, while Eckes runs 32nd.
Eckes just got bounced back on the back straightaway on one of the restarts and has not been able to recover at all. He's buried deep in the field and, quite frankly, is going to need a yellow flag of some form in order to get back up through this field and maybe get something. But at this point, he's 18 laps down. It's almost a race for prime at this point as we jump around and see a few more cars in trouble. Brent Wentz has got around on the front straightaway, no yellow flag. But at this point, Justin Prince, I want to turn our attention to another driver in that sort of second pack behind Ben Rhodes. I want to look at Kyle Long in the 75, the Mode Motorsports driver. Long, a retired guard for the Chicago Bears and also owner of Mode Media House, who sponsors that owns Mode Motorsports, one of the teams in the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing series that fields cars for Jake Nichols and Phil Diaz. So plenty of connections across the board here for Long in that 75 in iRacing competition.
Yeah, that Mode Motorsports organization as a whole across the iRacing service here, James, has grown very quickly. Having presences on the dirt side as well, some road course presence here and there, and having a lot of talented drivers come in as well as talented PR people. So that whole organization, I think, is going the right direction as Allgaier just smacked the wall hard. I think he blew his engine.
Absolutely blew his engine. Smoke pouring out of the back of that 7 machine, and just had some trouble with the bumps and the turtles over in turn 2. It's one of those very tricky things you have to watch out for here. If you're on the gas and you get it the wrong way, as you take a look at a replay and see what happened with Justin Allgaier. But if you catch those turtles the wrong way here at Myrtle Beach, your car goes flying. There are ways to drive over them where you can survive them, Pasoko, but if you touch it the wrong way, at minimum you're going up to the fence, and worst case scenario, like what we've just seen with Allgaier, your engine's blown, you're done for the rest of the night.
You could see it on the replay there. That was not a case where the left side tires just got down a little bit too cozy with them. I mean, he pretty much had that nose squared up on those curbs, and it popped that front end up in the air, and the engine was done just like that. You could see all the heavy black smoke. He is onto the pit lane, and his night is effectively done. And, you know, there are some short tracks that have curbing down onto the bottom. Not really the turtles that you see here at Myrtle Beach, if you will, where you actually use those curbs down on the inside to help the car rotate. That's not really how they operate here. You can lean on them and get it really, really close, but again, if you overstep that boundary, there really is no benefit to kicking the left-hand side of the race car up in the air a foot or two. So you want to be friends with them, but don't get too cozy. You do not want to end up on top of the curbs. I know that it is not always going to be what happened to Allgaier, but again, if you start shaking that race car around, not only are you going to be losing time, but you can get a little bit of damage here and there and kind of build that up over the course of a race.
Not like Sonoma or Watkins Glen or some of the better-known road courses in iRacing where you can't really ride the curves, Justin Prince, and get around a place. Here you want to stay off of them and not really bother with them whatsoever because normally they do more harm than good, as we still have a pretty good battle here towards the back part of the top 10. Of course, keeping our eyes on the front of the field as well, as Majeski still leads majors. And Erickson and Smithly are still in good shape as Christian Eckes looks like he's pulled it behind the wall and is done for the rest of the day. But some good battles here. Once you get to about, shall we say, maybe Kevin Iannarelli and Parker Kligerman, 6th and 7th. Good group in there. Kevin Hamlin, Drew Herring, Ben Rhodes, Tyler Overstreet, Harrison Burton, all in the mix, all within about a tenth to 2/10 of a second of one another.
Yeah, this is a whole entire choo-choo train of drivers around that bottom line and just matching line for line and pace for pace. This whole entire line's in the 20.7s. The problem is here in that's about 2 seconds off of Majeski and TJ Majors at this point. Just no one's just able to get an edge at this point. We're at that point of the run and the point of the race now where these drivers are just trying to focus on getting into a rhythm, trying to keep up the momentum and trying to make sure they don't overburn up their equipment for the end of the race. In turn, the drivers who might be putting up too much wheel, might be trying to hit the brakes a little too hard, might be putting in too much throttle, apex off, are the ones who are going to end up falling back in these trains such as this.
Right on board with Drew Herring, who currently has a windshield full of Kevin Hamlin in the 88, who has a very, very, very fantastic paint scheme. A throwback to the late 1990s when he went late model racing at his home Evergreen Speedway up in Washington State. Kevin, a native of way up that way, and also a very big Seahawks fan. If anybody's seen on Twitter, Evan Pasoko, anytime they come to play the Panthers in Charlotte, you know that Kevin Hamlin's going to be there in some form of Seahawks gear, one way or another.
But it's fun as well because you see all the drivers and of course, crew members and everybody who's ended up in that area having an opportunity to, kind of represent and cheer for their hometown teams, football and basketball alike. See a lot of that on Twitter and always fun to see. I, as well, take every opportunity I can to represent some of my teams north of the border whenever, they're down here in Vegas or if I'm somewhere, Seattle included, and I can go and check them out. But this is really the best battle on the racetrack right now, and Hamlin, I'm sure, is pretty worried right now because Drew Herring's been really liberal with that left rear quarter panel the last couple of times, leaning right on it. The 99 of Rhodes, the 19 of Overstreet, they're all kind of stacked up here. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Keep it a half eye up front because Majors has closed in on Majeski as there's the 19 car flash at a nose in a battle for P10.
Overstreet looked to the inside of Rhodes and then couldn't quite get there and looks to the inside again. But Justin Prince, I feel like Ben Rhodes has been alongside somebody almost the entirety of this race. It's been very impressive how much he hasn't been running single file in this race. We're seeing a little bit of a misnomer here and an anomaly so far as his race is concerned for him just to be trailing anybody and not be either to the outside or inside of someone.
And he's starting to actually give some love taps to Drew Herring right now, the TRD sim driver at this point. I think he's actually getting a little bit impatient. He was one of the quickest cars in practice, just hasn't had track position all night. This is the deepest he's been all evening. Just there has not been enough time so far, enough opportunities to set up passes. It is doable here at this track. It just takes multiple laps. And right now, he's just not been able to get the best of runs. Right now, it's his best opportunity to make a pass in the past few laps for P number 9.
Also want to make sure that you don't get up too high on this racetrack because there are marbles everywhere. They were not clean between practice and qualifying in this race. So if you get out of the groove, you're going to be in a lot of trouble as Hamlin caught the little curves out of turn 2, and that will give Rhodes the ability to drive to his inside. Tyler Overstreet is there, and then Herring gives him the bump and sends him all the way back. So Kevin Hamlin, who was in 8th, will slide back to 12th within their span of a lap. And as he slides back, we will slide into tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break, which as always is brought to you by iRacing, the world's leading online racing simulation. Developed from the beginning as a centralized racing and competition service, iRacing organizes, hosts, and officiates races on virtual tracks all around the world. iRacing is home to a wide variety of officially sanctioned series, with racing from the Australian Supercars, IndyCar, IMSA, NASCAR, the World of Outlaws, and more. Ty Majeski holds an 0.8 of a second lead over TJ Majors after 70 laps are complete. Jordan Erickson runs in 3rd, and Garrett Smithway holds the 4th position. 5th belongs to Ross Chastain. Kevin Iannarelli runs in 6th. Parker Kligerman has the 77 in P7. Ben Rose in the 99 is 8th. 9th is the 19 of Tyler Overstreet, and the 20 of Harrison Burton rounds out the top 10.
Continuing on through, Drew Herring's in that number 11 spot, along with Kevin Hamlin, who you just mentioned, recently fell to P number 12, but it has been big gains for the cars behind him. Kyle Long at a battle with Joshua Williams right now. They both started outside of the top 30, right now running 13th and 14th position, as Williams is going to take that spot away, so flip-flop them. Ron Capps continues his iRacing tour de force, just passed by Josh Berry, so Berry goes 15th, Capps is going to be 16th, and it'll be the final car on the lead lap. So lap cars include Kyle Busch, who runs in 17th position. Chris Rice is in 18th spot, but he's stopped on the racetrack. Duggar's going to go up to 18th spot, at AJ McCarron in P20.
Yeah, Rice just blew up after he had some trouble with the Turtles. That will move Rodney Childers up to 21st position when he comes around. Brett Wentz, a part of Team Penske and the Wood Brothers, in 22nd now. Coleman Presley, 3 laps down in about 23rd. Bobby Labonte, 4 laps down after and being involved in the big one in the early stage of the race. Rest of the field, multiple laps down. Kevin Harvick, 11 laps down. Regan Smith, 13 laps down and multiple trips to the pit lane. Justin Haley, 28th. Dale Jr., 29, 17 laps down. He's the last car running. Everybody else is off the track, starting with Justin Allgaier in 30th.
Final cars on the pylon are Jack House, Christian Eckes, Ryan Truex, Boris Cook, Jake Briscoe, Anthony Alfredo, and Taylor Gray. And that concludes tonight's iRacing Midway Race Break. With over 130,000 drivers on the surface and over 80 laser scan tracks and cars to choose from, iRacing is the original esports racing game. And for more information, you can visit iRacing.com today. And so many members have come aboard in the past few weeks. Justin Prince, the growth has been explosive. Almost 20,000 members that have signed on between March and April. So have to believe a little bit of TV time certainly isn't hurting, but here's the thing. Just because we've seen the eNASCAR iRacing Pro Invitational Series on Fox, just because you see the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series on iRacing's Facebook and Twitch and YouTube pages, doesn't mean that's the only kind of racing available. You could go all over the world. You could go road course racing. You could go short track racing, because Dale Earnhardt Jr. ends up in trouble and around in turn 1. And we may have another yellow flag here. We'll wait to see if race control throws it, but Junior gets it going and will continue under the green flag as he got into the 15 machine, bounced off the wall. Looks like he got a little bit of help from the 15 of Regan Smith. So Smith and Earnhardt Jr. coming together. Smith is now parked it on pit road. Junior continuing around in 29th. I guess we had a little NBC versus Fox battle there, Justin Prince.
I don't know if Dale Jr. is going to be too happy with his one-time driver from Junior Motorsports there, but it's just been a rough day for Dale Jr. He had that right front damage before then that was breaking the suspension and the speed after he smacked the wall as traffic was going by. And then you have Smith, who's had that rough day. Now, even more damage added to the race cars. Just got to focus up still. 45 laps to go. And as all of that's gone on, TJ Majors has now fallen to more than a second back from Ty Majeski.
Majeski with all the speed. I guess the real question, Evan Pusoko, although I don't necessarily know if you've got the right to answer this, but on Regan Smith's part, was that a little bit of a foxy move, or was he just a little bit too peacocky and all that?
Oh, you set that one up, and listen, the first thing I said when we saw that, it was a bit of NBC on Fox Crime there, and listen, those guys are buddies, so if you can't give your buddy a shunt, then who can you send for a bump and run here at Myrtle Beach? And you guys mentioned Majeski, his advantage is now 1.1, 1.2 seconds ahead as we go on board with Ross Chastain, who runs into number 6 spot. Kevin Iannarelli's been able to get around him, so Chastain falling to P6 after he started this race in 2nd position, but is not willing to kind of let him run away. They're both dealing with Parker Kligerman, who is the biggest mover tonight, 35th to 7th, so a plus 28 for the Valvoline Chevy behind. This could be a trio of cars who may kind of be at the forefront of the battles going down to the end of this race, as a couple of times around it will be with inside of 40 to go.
And Kevin Harvick just a little bit further back of that. But while we have our eyes on Ross Chastain, it's as good a time as ever to take a look at our LeafFilter Leaf Guard and tell you where the LeafFilter drivers are running in tonight's race. Ross Chastain in that Nutrient Ag Solutions machine, which is also the proud partner of the Fast Repair in the Leaf Gutter Filter iRacing Series. iRacing Replacement Series, that is. But in either case, he's up in P6. Meanwhile, you have to go a little bit further back to find the other two drivers of that group, Justin Haley and Chris Rice. Haley currently 23 laps down in 29th, and Chris Rice a little bit further back, 26th in this show. Not necessarily the greatest tonight for that group, but Talladega in 2 weeks' time. Justin Prince, that's a wild card as any place. You could go to an iRacing, and who knows what will happen when we get there. Beyond the fact that we will need some of the Nutrient Ag Solutions fast repairs, I think that's the only guarantee.
Yeah, you never know when the big one's going to strike at Talladega, right? There could be a lot of teamwork, though, in that race. There could also be a lot of potential rivalries that flare up at Talladega, with drivers getting ditched up to the top line since you could go up to 3 wide when we go to Talladega. Should be some fun racing, though, for some of these competitors, though. It's been a fun race, though, at the short track here, though, I have to say, James. Nice and calm racing, very clean throughout this run. Very long green flag run. And so far, the best of the best drivers we've seen across the service in terms of the real-world experience, as well as some drivers we've seen rise up to the top here, have just made their way up to the top. The problem is for Ty Majeski, he's going to have to say hello to the huge gaggle of cars at the end of the top 10.
Jeski's going to have to worry about lap traffic, but as we mentioned, drivers who have come up through the field. I want to turn our attention back to Parker Kligerman and back to NBC a little bit, Evan Prosciutto, just because for those who haven't been paying attention, the Short Track Challenge has been all over NBCSN at 7 p.m. this week. We've run at Rocket Cam. Parker was there on Monday. We ran at Lucas Oil Raceway tomorrow, and tonight we saw everything from Myrtle Beach Speedway. Been a lot of fun to see that. And guess what? Championship race tomorrow at Martinsville Speedway, where the best of the best across those first 3 days will take to the paperclip to see who is the king of short track racing.
Yeah, we've seen a ton of action, and some of the names in this field as well involved in that. I know it's been a rough race for Dale Earnhardt Jr., and I hope that he wasn't trying to use this street stock race tonight at Myrtle Beach as a last, kind of run through a practice, because his group goes racing here tomorrow at 7 o'clock Eastern time, so a rough go for him, but he'll be racing with the likes of Myatt Snyder, Timmy Hill, Matt DiBenedetto, Ryan Preece, and Landon Castle, all of that at 7 Eastern on NBCSN, and of course we'll take our transferees from today's race at Lucas Oil with Kyle Larson, Christopher Bell, along with William Byron and Kyle Busch from last night as well, and it'll be a ton of fun action. Those are big cars, though, at Myrtle Beach, not these street stocks. They drive totally different, and that race I think going to be a lot more of a handful than these street stocks. This is kind of a match made in heaven, this car on this track. When you bring the Cup cars here to Myrtle Beach tomorrow afternoon, that is kind of a wild fantasy that'll be a real fun challenge.
A very wild fantasy indeed. And if you want to see what happens at Myrtle Beach, tune in 7 p.m. tomorrow night on NBCSN for race number 3 of the Short Track Challenge. Should be a lot of fun to keep our eyes peeled and see what happens as NBC supports and celebrates Racing Week in America all week long. As Majeski continues to lead, he's got TJ Majors a little bit closer, but they're starting to work lap traffic amongst the first few cars here. Justin Prince and Also, I think we have to give a call here to Jordan Erickson in the 85. He's been so stout in these street stocks. Got a great start, jumped up into the top 5 early on in this race, and the graphics man for Team Penske just has not looked back since.
Yeah, he's looked really sporty. He showed some good speed as well when we were at Kansas in the Cup cars just a couple weeks ago. I think he's got a solid knack for this, to say the very least. Just very consistent. He's actually quicker than the leaders, in part because of the traffic. Currently bouncing between the 6s and the 7s, the 26s and 7s, so he's got some good pace. Only about 3/4 tenths of fall off in this race for him so far. And looking very nice and clean on all his passes in the traffic as well. And Evan, you've seen him as well in various different competitions on the iRacing service. He's just that type of talented driver, not just talented in the design work, Evan.
Yeah, no, certainly. I mean, there's a lot of people as well when you kind of get involved with the design work and, you're on iRacing a lot, that the track time helps a lot. Cover Jordan with the Wednesday Night Racing Series, where he's had some strong runs recently, and he'll be on track tomorrow for that event as well. So he's kind of one of the iRacing ringers, if you would, that has that real-world connection. It's funny, Pike, because a lot of the time we talk about the drivers in this series in particular, they're real-life drivers who have an iRacing connection. They kind of, go through it in reverse order. Jordan Erickson, somebody who is an iRacing person with a real-life racing connection. I think that's super cool.
Starting to see more of that, not only with some of the drivers who are coming up through the short track series and coming up through some of NASCAR's programs. Raja Karuth, I think, is a great example, who has come up through iRacing and is now part of the Drive for Diversity and is racing with Rev Racing. Max Siegel in 2020 and is currently racing in Road to Pro, I do believe, that is taking place as we speak. But so many other drivers who have NASCAR connections and are beginning to make their way through the iRacing side of things as well. And then you've got some drivers who are just sort of completely out of left field and don't necessarily have an iRacing connection, but within the last few weeks have adopted iRacing and really taken to it and run just about everything. And there may not be a better example of that in this field than the 28 of Ron Capps, who currently runs in 16th, usually driver of a funny car over in the NHRA Yellow Drag Racing Series for Don Schumacher, but has run so much stuff in iRacing, whether or not it's tonight, whether or not it's something in the nature of the World of Outlaws, whether or not it's a cup car, he's been just about everywhere.
What I joked earlier, that he's continuing his tour de force. For the love of all things racing, when this is all done, can somebody please give Ron Capps a stock car ride for a race if he wants it? Because it's not just been this replacement iRacing series. This is a couple of cars slow, and it looks like Kevin Iannarelli may have been involved in an incident in the 27 car. He got turned around by the 8 machine behind of Dale Jr. So they made some contact, and we're going to get a second look at that one. There was no caution, so this race stays green. A tough break for Iannarelli, who had moved it into a top 10 position. That's really going to hurt his night, but just to kind of put a bow on that point about Ron Capps, he's been doing this in the street stocks, this in the NASCAR Cup cars. Of course, can't drive his NHRA dragster on iRacing. He's been doing IndyCar stuff, James. He has been on every single broadcast, I think, that I have looked at. He is loving doing everything he can, and that's really the sign of a true racer. Is it doesn't matter what it is. If it's got a steering wheel and pedals, put me in it and I'll drive it. And that's been Ron Capps' mentality.
Yeah, he looks so impressive in some of these races too, with how quickly he's been adapting to these different races so far. But now it's going to get interesting to see though what happens. One person that's been really adapting to, you have to give credit to, Kyle Busch. He put in a lot of work to give him credit for that Sunday race. He's on Fox. Put in hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of laps just before the drop of the green flag for the heat to try and learn every nuance and limitation of the racetrack. At one point was up on the top 5, and now he's up to 16th in the street stock.
Got a little bit of Rowdy energy and a little bit of Napa know-how. Both groups have been pretty involved in sim racing over the past few weeks. You got the Rowdy Energy Super Select Series on Saturday nights, and then Napa been everywhere with Capps, like you said, Evan, over the course of these past few weeks. And a big hello to everybody over at the Napa camp. on this Tuesday evening as we are beginning to work our way into the final 15 laps of tonight's race. And there is no answer for Ty Majeski at this stage. But guess what? Ben Rhodes is yet again in another pretty good battle. This time, he's trying to hold off Tyler Overstreet in the 19 as they come out of turn 4. Overstreet just hounding the 99 machine of Rhodes.
He was once the last car, and I think this was that 4-car train that we were seeing a little bit earlier. And of course, the likes of Klingerman's been able to get on through. They were both able to get around Chastain, who is at a race low P8 right now, but still a really good spot for that number 10 machine after starting in second. But this could be one of those fights that go down to the end, and just in front of them is the 8-car, Dale Earnhardt Jr. Could be a tricky car to get around. He's been in a bit of contact since getting back onto the racetrack, 18 laps down in 27th position, but wants to race this one out, and he'll open up the inside line for Ben Rhodes to get down on the bottom. And maybe if he has to work on the 8 for a couple of laps here, this could be Overstreet's opportunity to set him up.
Definitely would agree on that front. If you can use Earnhardt as a pick, the irony of that one, huh? But Earnhardt, I gotta love, just because you know you're working with the North Carolinian when you see somebody pull out the old Hardee's logo from way back in the 80s and the 90s. You get a sense of where Junior's come from way back in the day when he ran tracks like Myrtle Beach as a short track racer all the way through what was then the NASCAR Busch Series, now the NASCAR Xfinity Series. But way back, 1998, 1999, when Junior was busy winning championships in that series, they came here. And Myrtle Beach Speedway was a regular stop on this tour, Justin Prince, with a lot of the other great short tracks that are sort of in this ballpark. The Concord Speedways, the South Boston Speedways in particular, and a lot of the other short tracks here in the Carolinas that also happen to be scanned into the service.
Yeah, many of the drivers and veterans actually on this surface lived on those short tracks, but Ben Rhodes, my goodness, went up the track. What a cut inside by Overstreet to take away that spot. Very well executed by the Bass Pro Shops machine to diamond his way off the corner and cut as hard as he did to take that bottom line and take advantage to take away the spot. Now, coming up to 10 laps to go for them, got to keep the car clean. However, they're going to have to avoid A.J. McCarron, who just hit the turtles.
McCarron hits the turtles, goes to the fence. He was fighting Jonathan Davis for position just a little bit ago, but McCarron now has pulled it off the racetrack and is down on pit road for repairs. So he will resume his race a little bit later, and we'll see if he can get back on track before we get to the final few laps of this race within the final 10 laps already. And it's all about Ty Majeski, but there's still a great battle here for 6th, 7th, and 8th. This is where we need to really keep our eyes on, because Rhodes and Overstreet continue to fight in 3 and 4.
And this is where I'm going to be nervous if I'm Ty Majeski, because these guys aren't really thinking about, I should probably take it easy and not cause the yellow for the sake of Ty. The only thing that Overstreet's thinking of is getting this spot from Ben Rhodes one way or another. Of course, Chastain, the caboose of this trio, looking on from about a car length back, and that virtual courage, as is a term that we've seen thrown around the last couple of weeks, is going to go up and up the later we get in this race. You're parked on the bumper now, looking to the inside. Rhodes is going to bite, left it open for a moment. Now he'll slide back down, doing everything he can to maintain P6. This time by on that note, we'll see 6 laps to go.
Already almost to the end of tonight's race, and still no end to the battles in 6th and 7th and 8th. And even then, you can throw Drew Herring into that mix as well, Justin Prince, because he's right there, ready to take advantage of any mistakes that any one of these drivers in front of him might make.
Yeah, remember, Ross Chastain in the mix was the car who hit Iranarelli when he had trouble off 3 and 4 before. So Ross Chastain is a little bit damaged on the front nose. Isn't affecting his speed too much. He's actually able to send it into the corners a little bit harder. But if you're Drew Herring, you know that possibility. You can try and exploit for the end of the straightaway and try and dive into the inside if you can to take away the spot. Just no hole being left by Chastain, who's looking really squiggly off the corners.
Chastain very loose. Overstreet giving it absolutely everything. You can see the left front of that 19 just come up everywhere. He almost ran it too hard out of turn 2, as I think Rhodes got the fence a little bit. Is Overstreet going to try and send the bumper? He gets into Ben Rhodes. Rhodes goes around on the inside of turn 4, loops it back straight, then gets pounded by Dale Earnhardt Jr. on the exit of the corner, and they flip, they bounce, Yellow flag.
There it is.
Out right at the end of the race. You really couldn't script it, Evan Pasoko, now could you?
And I think that goes down, I don't know if it's the commentator's curse or if I put my Larry Back hat on or what, but I said that, and listen, he didn't hit him that hard, but I was concerned that if these guys got into it, I think Overstreet had a faster car. As you see the replay, got a nose in there, and it was kind of non-committed on the 99 machine, turned him around, and at that point, we were going to be fine. This race would have stayed green. Rhodes tries to get it back out on the track, gets nailed by the 8 of Earnhardt, goes up and over, no choice for the tower but to throw a caution flag, and yes, this race will be extended for a green-white checker to finish. Ty Majeski's 1 second advantage is gone as we go on board with the 8 car.
As Earnhardt comes up, you might be able to catch way out in front. This all starts because Rhodes bounces off the fence in the middle of the back straightaway. That's what gave Overstreet the run to get just underneath the 99 enough to spin him out. And then when the 99 came back up the racetrack, he actually tried to get going and left Earnhardt absolutely nowhere to go as that 99 crept into the picture from the bottom, and Earnhardt was just a passenger almost. There was nothing he could have done to avoid Ben Rhodes.
Yeah, I don't think Ben Rhodes realized how quickly Dale Jr. was coming around that corner, was trying to quickly, I think, fire it up to make sure he didn't lose too much time, and instead, Dale Jr.'s not expecting the car to pull up across the racetrack. He was already committed to the top line. But this really changes the complexion of this race because we're in green-white checker territory now, and these are very, very old tires after a massively long run. The amount of potential for tire spin could be very risky off the start.
Could be very risky, and there'll be plenty to dissect here before we go green flag racing. But before we get the green flag and find out who wins this race, let's tell you about some of the events that are coming up this week in the world of iRacing. And it starts with a new event, the Subaru IRX All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama, coming to you from hell. But not the hell that you think of. How about hell, the Rallycross course in Norway? But that'll come to you this Friday, April 10th, 6 p.m. Eastern. Evan Pasoko going to be on the call for that one. Then IndyCar is back on NBCSN at 2:30 p.m. Eastern this Saturday afternoon. They'll go to Michigan International Raceway. So we'll get some US 500 vibes from the late 1990s when CART used to be there on Saturday afternoon. Then next Tuesday night, April 14th, the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series is back in action from Richmond Raceway, and that'll be right here on twitch.tv/iRacing, along with YouTube and Facebook on Tuesday night. As we get set for the restart and we get set for so much action to come your way as Majeski and Majors lead the field off the corner for what could be the final restart of the race. Emphasis on that could be, though. You never quite know what will happen as DJ Majors got a fantastic start. Ron Capps nearly gets turned in the middle of the field and does get turned by Harrison Burton. They're wrecking and crashing all over the front straightaway, and the yellow flag will come out again for a second attempt at a green-white checker finish.
Well, that had to come out with the way that was going there. Ron Capps really having to deal with a ton of tire spin, but also doesn't help when you have Harrison Burton trying to take it 3 wide up the middle, which is not a smart thing to do, let's just say that, at any sort of racetrack. So, unfortunately, it involves Kyle Busch and a couple others with significant damage after they had such good runs.
Although, to be fair, Evan, if it's, 2 laps to go, green-white checker restarted the race, it almost goes back to the famous verse of Ayrton Senna. If you see a gap, you have to go for it, because if you don't go for that gap, you're no longer a racing driver. And in Burton's case, I think that's exactly what he was thinking. There was a little bit of a hole that developed between Capps and Iannarelli. Capps didn't have the greatest of restarts, and Burton nailed the restart in comparison and was just trying to gain a few spots before the end of the race.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten jacked up at a couple of restarts at the start of some races here recently. So I think that at the end of the race, you almost have to expect that if you're on Capps, you have to know that if you don't get a good restart, you can't really come back down in line because somebody like a 20 Machida Burton's going to be all over you. But the other thing as well is that you can see it as we're here under the caution flag. Once you get up against that second white hash marked line on the bottom of the racetrack, it is really messy up there with the dirt and the grind and the marbles. The track did not get clear cleaned from the hour-and-a-half practice through to qualifying, through to the race. So even 132 laps ago, it was gross up there. Look at all that stuff as you go on board with Iannarelli. You do not want to be up there. I think the reason he had the tire spin is because he was too far up and out of line, and by the time you get up there, at that point, it's not going to be easy to recover, and he really had no chance of getting back down into line. Should have probably hit the eject button.
Would have maybe been a little bit smarter, perhaps, to get out of the way, but still to his great credit. Plenty of good stuff from Ron Capps, and I have a feeling we'll see a Twitter video tonight. He's been pretty good about posting race recaps on social media, so go keep an eye on Ron's Twitter if you want to follow more from the Napa Auto Parts drag racing machine, quite frankly, at this point. But Light still on the pace car. Majeski still out front. But Justin Prince, I think if you're Majeski, you also have to be careful on these restarts and make sure that you don't get beat bad, because that restart TJ Majors had was the absolute best he had all evening long, and he would have been alongside Majeski, was alongside Majeski, in fact, when the yellow flag came out, but they would have been side by side racing for the lead had we stayed green. So you have to stay on your toes if you're the 45. You've been the most dominant car in this race, but it's not quite sealed just yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And Majors planned that out perfectly just to keep himself side by side by the time they get up to the gears. But you have to remember, with the tire spin, it can get very difficult. These cars going to be very difficult to shift when they get back in the gears, and as well, there's the chance you jam the car in neutral if you have a manual clutch. So many of these drivers going to have to be careful again. If I'm Majors, you need to have the same start you had again, then hope it goes green, and hope you can try and pinch Majeski enough to hold him up and try and go side by side to the finish.
That's the question. Second attempt of 3 to green-white checker. Majeski and Majors leading the field to green, then Ericsson and Smithley behind. Better restart for Majeski this time. Not as good for Majors. Ericsson to Majors inside. He's weaving and bobbing, trying to maintain his spot. Oh, there goes the bump and run from Jordan Ericsson to get underneath Majeski. They're side by side for the race lead with a lap and a half to go.
Majors now going to cross to the inside. He'll give Ericsson a shove down in 3 and 4. He's going to lean on Majeski. Oh, the 22 is going to get turned. Do they get to the white flag? Yes, they do. It's Ericsson ahead of Majeski. There's the payback.
Huge shove there from Majeski. Ericsson's going to have one more shot. Over street, around on the back straightaway. What will Ericsson do? He'll try and drive it in deep, but he's too far back in time. Majeski's going to survive as Iannarelli gets shoved by Barry in 4. And Ty Majeski gets his first win in the LeafFilter Gutter Protection iRacing Replacement Series and gets it done at Myrtle Beach. He survived the bump and run and gave it right back to Jordan Ericsson on the final lap to make sure that the race he dominated was the race that went to him. And that trophy from Myrtle Beach is going to look pretty nice in Ty Majeski's house, I would think, Justin Prince.
I think so too, but that finish, we saw all of the bump and runs you can possibly expect. But at the same time, I don't blame guys like Ericsson trying to go for the shots like that, because honestly, that was one of his only chances to try and get Majeski out of the lead, was force him off the bottom line, force him to check up with trying to hold on to the car and make sure it doesn't have too much momentum, and in turn, try and hold on. Just that one shot from Majeski back was the main difference for Majeski to take the victory after leading the majority of the laps tonight.
Have to believe he'll take that one, Evan Pashoko. He's been close since the replacements came into play, and he's been close in the first few weeks since the races at Atlanta and Homestead were postponed, and we've delved into the sim racing heavy world. Had a lot of good runs across the board, but hadn't found victory lane until tonight. But here he is, finally in victory lane at Myrtle Beach.
And at the end of the day, one of the sayings that I like the most is they don't ask how, they ask how many. And that's what both Ty Majeski and Jordan Ericsson were thinking about there. Ty could have led the 126 laps that he did en route to victory lane here, but if he did not lead the last one, it would not have mattered. And that's what Ericsson was thinking. I don't care that he's been up all front all night. I've been one of the fastest cars. I deserve this thing. And I think that that was about as good of a way as you could settle it short track style. Ericsson gets the first shot in, Ty gets him back, nobody got wrecked in it, some good old bump and run action, and Ericsson wasn't close enough to get to him in that final time, and Ty Majeski gets his first win.
As we take a look at the full field rundown for this second race of the LeafFilter Gutter Protection Replacements iRacing Series from Myrtle Beach Speedway. Majeski gets the victory over Jordan Erickson. Parker Kligerman, we barely saw him on that final restart, barely even talked about him, but 35th to 3rd in this race. Don't doubt Kligerman can't wheel. No surprise that the owner, or co-owner at least, Burton Kligerman Esports, had a pretty good run tonight. Garrett Smithley, another one who's shown some iRacing prowess, finishes in the 4th spot. Drew Herring came up at the very end of that and finished in the 5th spot. 6th place went to Josh Berry, who got that quasi-invert, shall we call it. The top 5 finishers at Kansas started all the way in the back of the field per replacements rules, and he came all the way through it to get a top 10 finish. Harrison Burton came home in 7th. Josh Williams, same sort of story as Josh Berry, started in the back after finishing top 5 at Kansas and came home in 8th. Kevin Iannarelli finishes in 9th after starting 10th, and Kyle Long, another one who had to charge from deep in the field, started 36th, finished tonight in 10th.
11th position tonight, Tyler Overstreet in front of TJ Majors. Everybody else, 1 lap down or more tonight. Kyle Busch finished in 13th position, the only car on his lap cycle. Tim Duggar finished in 14th, Jonathan Davis in 15th. Unfortunate for Ron Capps, a 16th place finish, 2 laps down, 3 laps down, Ronnie Childers, along with Coleman Pressling in 18th, Bobby Lonnie in 19th position, 5 laps down, and Kevin Hamlin finishes without a front end, 20th, 8 laps down.
The tough breaks continue for the likes of Brent Wentz, who finished in 21st position, and Ross Chastain, who, guys, admittedly had a really good night until the end, who came home in 22nd. Same story for Ben Rhodes, was involved in that incident. With about 3 laps to go, that led us to overtime. He finishes 23rd. Kevin Harvick in his debut, 24th, and A.J. McCarron in P25. Continuing on through, you've got Regan Smith in 26th position, Dale Earnhardt Jr. in 27th, with Chris Rice in 28th, Justin Haley P29, and Justin Allgaier in 30th.
31st was Jack Knaus. Christian Eckes came home in 32nd. 33rd went to Ryan Truex, and Boris Cook came home in 34th. Chase Briscoe was 35th. Anthony Alfredo and Taylor Gray rounded out the 37-car field. And as we begin to close the book on Myrtle Beach, Evan, I want to turn to you first here, because before we even start talking about the next race, definitely want to talk about the All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama. Haven't had a lot of rallycross pop up within these last few weeks, but we're finally getting some, and you get to be a part of it.
It is going to be a ton of fun as we get sent to racing for a 6-week championship with this special event. You mentioned we've seen basically everything else, some of the ovals, some of the road, and of course the dirt oval as well. So I think the only thing left on the docket was to go racing for the Subaru iRacing Rallycross All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama. As I mentioned, 6 weeks. It all kicks off at Hell this time around. It'll be a Friday start at 6 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, and 3 o'clock for those like myself over here on the West Coast. And, it is going to be a handful of super exciting racetracks every single week. Daytona next week, Sonoma, Lucas Oil, Atlanta, and then back out to Hell on May the 15th for the season finale. That's going to be fun. We've also got some short course action with the Pro 4 and the Pro 2s this Saturday as well at 3 o'clock p.m. Eastern for the Jim Beaver Esports East Short Course World Championship presented by General Tire. So if you're a fan of the dirt slinging and you've been waiting patiently for your pro invitationals to come around, you were going to be nice and awfully busy for this weekend and the next couple of ones through. And admittedly, Pike, for all of the things that I've had an opportunity to do, never a rallycross race. So really looking forward to that. And if you guys are interested by that kind of action, hope to see you on Friday.
Should be a lot of fun. Should be very entertaining to watch. I don't know. That'll be early enough to where I think, tune in for a little bit before the Porsche Club of America gets going on the iRacing Esports Network. But Justin Prince, Talladega with the Cup cars, 2 weeks from tonight. Lots of fun coming our way, April 21st. Do you even want to try and guess what we are going to see when we get to Alabama?
Well, we're going to see madness, and more madness. Sprinkle in a few craziness and a few different types of moments as well. Lots of good racing at Talladega Superspeedway coming up at that racetrack for the Cup cars. Going to be lots of potential possibilities, though, for danger, big ones, teamwork, rivalries flaring up, and a little bit of everything in between. It's going to be a crazy race. Let's put it that way, James, when we go to Talladega. Honestly, anything can happen once the green flag flies.
Maybe more so at Talladega than anywhere else. And before we get to Talladega, 2 more events to remind you about. Don't forget that IndyCar is back on NBCSN here in the United States at 2:30 p.m. Eastern this Saturday for their event from Michigan, the 3rd race of the iRacing IndyCar Challenge, and that should be a lot of fun. First oval race for those drivers in that series, and you can catch that on your TV on NBCSN, or if you have the NBC Sports app on your phone, you can also watch that event there as well. And then Evan and Tim and Randy back in the booth for the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series from Richmond Raceway, round number 5, coming up next Tuesday night, April 14th, 9 p.m. Eastern on the iRacing Twitch channel, iRacing Facebook page, and the iRacing YouTube channel. Don't forget that if you want to get your career started with iRacing, you can log on to iRacing.com today and pick up a membership and hopefully pick up a wheel, get the chance to run these street stocks. It's one of the first things you run in the oval tree as you work your way up all the way to the cars that are run in the NASCAR Cup Series. Then you can visit iRacing.com for all the details on how to get started on that front. It is time for us to close our broadcast tonight from Myrtle Beach Speedway and close out round number 2 of the LeafFilter Gutter Protection Replacements iRacing Series. So, for Kevin Hamlin, TJ Majors, and everybody behind the Replacements League, for our producer tonight, Cisco Scalamoza, and for my partners in the booth, Evan Pashoko and Justin Prince, I am James Pike. Thank you so much for watching this evening's broadcast of the LeafFilter Gutter Protection Replacements iRacing Series, and we look forward to seeing you on Friday when we go Rallycross Racing from Hell, the Subaru IRX All-Star Invitational presented by Yokohama. Up next here at iRacing, don't miss it. We'll see you then.